Intel report for Friday, November 18, 2022. Inside the Beltway. Domestic INSM. Geostrategic INSM. Low-intensity conflict activity roll-up and outlook. White House, President Biden is scheduled to join Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in a speech this afternoon. Congress, nothing significant to report, NSTR. AC. Top domestic concerns in the short term are the potential for a rail strike in December, energy shortages that could hit electric grids this winter, and inflating food prices. A rail strike in December would influence both energy shortages and food prices as oil and agricultural products move by rail. A concern in the longer term is cybersecurity vulnerabilities of critical infrastructure. A concerning development is the approaching deadline in January for a plan from the Department of Homeland Security for the continuity of the economy in the case of a catastrophic cyber attack. DHS had 2 years to create this plan and has evaded questioning from lawmakers on its progress. RC. Food and AG. House Republicans are set to spar with Senate Democrats and the Biden administration over the upcoming farm bill scheduled for debate next year. Biden has promised to slash emissions and implement further environmental regulations on U.S. agriculture production, while Republicans want to cut the USDA's spending on climate change and focus on maximizing food production. Economy. San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly said that it is not too unreasonable to expect a 4.5 to 5% unemployment rate following the final rate hike in this cycle. If accurate, this represents an additional 1 million Americans set to lose their jobs through early next year. Natural gas storage closes gap, grid still at risk for shortage. U.S. gas inventories rose by a record 64 billion cubic feet last week, bringing total stockpiles to 3.644 trillion cubic feet as of November 11. According to a report from the North American Electric Reliability Council, severe weather this winter may cause demand to outpace supply, but this year's assessment is less dire than in 2021. The report stated that the grids in Texas and the Northeast are most at risk for supply shortfalls. Hess CEO, U.S. no longer swing producer. Hess CEO John Hess stated that underinvestment in shale production will lead to tight oil supplies and modest growth for the next 2 years. Hess projected U.S. production to peak at 13 million barrels per day and that with shale supplies likely to stay tight, the U.S. will no longer act as a global swing producer. Shippers divert cargo from West Coast due to fear of strikes. The threat of a strike during negotiations between the International Longshore and Warehouse Union and the Pacific Maritime Corporation has motivated shippers to divert cargo from the West Coast to the Gulf and East Coasts. Though both sides have signed joint media releases stating there will be no strike, Port of Los Angeles Executive Director Gene Soroka says there is still concern about the potential for a strike disrupting shipping. Trade group warns rail strike could be catalyst for recession. The American Chemical Council warned in a report that a rail strike could be the catalyst for a full-on economic recession in the United States. The report stated that a rail strike could cause a 1% contraction in U.S. GDP and hurt the agriculture sector, which has become more reliant on rail for shipping while the Mississippi River experiences record low water levels. The Association of American Railroads estimates it would take an additional 467,000 long-haul trucks per day to move all railroad freight in the event of a strike. RC. DHS silent on continuity of economy plan. Earlier this year, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, was tasked with developing a plan for continuity of economy in the case of a catastrophic cyber incident. In a letter to the White House earlier this month, Representative Garbarino, Democrat New York, stated that there had been no word on the progress of the plan, although a January 2023 deadline was approaching. A Government Accountability Office report published Thursday said that the Department of Interior had taken few steps to address cybersecurity vulnerabilities of offshore oil and gas infrastructure. RC. Russia-NATO sitrep. German army prepares for war with Russia. Classified documents obtained by German media outlet Der Spiegel indicate the German military is preparing for a war with Russia. The report titled Operational Instructions for the Armed Forces was prepared by Inspector General of the German Armed Forces, General Eberhard Zorn, who called on German military forces to prepare for Russian attacks that could occur without warning and create high casualties. Zorn warned in the report that a direct conflict along NATO's eastern flank had become likely, saying German forces must focus efforts on training and building operational readiness for a high-intensity scenario to form a backbone of deterrence. Zorn indicated that this requires the German military to be able to provide combat and action-ready forces independent of U.S. support, as war in Europe is again a reality, and NATO could not afford to begin planning and massing forces only when an attack occurs. AC. Zorn's comments reflect ongoing concerns of a delayed American response to a potential conflict in Europe. NATO countries like Germany are concerned over a lack of logistical capacity and reductions in U.S. stockpiles of armed vehicles after the closure of several U.S. installations in Germany. RP. Russia approves extension of grain deal. United Nations officials announced an agreement to extend the Black Sea grain deal facilitating the export of grain from Ukraine. UN officials say that negotiations on Russian fertilizer exports will come next. Critics note that the extension is only for another 4 months before making a return to uncertainty regarding Russia's willingness to continue the agreement. AC. This is positive news for the global food crisis, especially as Argentina has cut by nearly half their expected wheat harvest this year due to drought and difficult weather conditions. MS. Azerbaijan attends NATO summit. Azeri news sources announced a delegation of Azerbaijani parliament members have arrived in England to attend the annual NATO Parliamentary Summit. The move comes days after Azeri President Ilham Aliyev made several pro-NATO comments during a joint press conference following a meeting with the Albanian government, where Aliyev praised his country's platform of close cooperation with NATO and called for closer ties with Albania and the collective West. The NATO Parliamentary Summit is expected to focus on Euro-Atlantic security, energy production, and global finances. AC. Azerbaijan has become a diplomatic target for the NATO alliance due to the need for Azeri gas flows. Continued close cooperation with the country creates a potential ally in the strategic Caspian Sea region between Russia and Iran. This is likely to be viewed as a provocation by Russia, which has repeatedly warned against continued NATO expansion along its borders. RP. China and Indo-Pacific sitrep. Japan's Kishida and China's 11 meet over growing tensions. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida met with Chinese President Xi Jinping yesterday in Thailand on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, summit. Japan has lodged a series of diplomatic complaints over Chinese activity in its economic exclusive zone near the disputed the Senkaku Islands/Diaoyutai Chuindo. China has also begun oil and gas extraction operations in a buffer zone along the maritime border between the two countries. AC. Xi and Kishida are battling economic difficulties at home, and both nations are in the process of massive military buildups for a potential future conflict. China develops cross-medium drones. Chinese researchers unveiled 2 new prototype cross-medium submarine drones this week capable of autonomous operation in the air and underwater. China is also currently fielding a supersonic cruise missile torpedo that can fly at Mach 2.5 before entering a sea-skimming mode and then dive subsurface as a supercavitating torpedo. China claims there are no defenses against its cross-medium drone weapons. AC. U.S. and allied military defenses have few, if any, systems capable of countering cross-platform weapons. China's continued development of niche weapon systems appears specifically designed to exploit Western military air and naval defense capabilities. China, years into its proven hypersonic weapons programs and now adding cross-platform systems to its arsenal, is outpacing U.S. and allied efforts to build functional countermeasures. End report.